Molly here, and welcome to another season of Star Trek Discovery, fortunately, the last. Before I get started on the first episode's recap, I would like to ask everyone that if you are not currently subscribed to our channel and you like what we do, to please hit that subscribe button. We currently have 886 subscribers at the time of our recording this video, and unfortunately you need 1,000 to apply for monetization. So every ad you see on our channel, absolutely none of that revenue comes to us. So please hit that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, share us as far and as wide as possible so that perhaps we can get monetized and maybe get a little grocery money coming in for everything we do here. In this first week of the final season, 2 episodes were actually dropped on the same day for some reason. I will recap both of them, and then we will discuss them both after that. Season 5, Episode 1, Red Directive. The episode starts with Michael Burnham riding on top of a ship, which I think we all probably saw in the teaser trailer. The episode then goes back 4 hours, and we're in this incredibly boring gathering, which is allegedly celebrating the Federation's 1,000th anniversary. But not really, because they didn't celebrate during the burn, and now they're just getting around to it, so whatever. The banter lets us know that Saru has been offered an ambassadorial position, which would mean he would leave Discovery behind. Tilly will eventually go back to teaching at the Academy. The Mushroom Drive program has been shelved, so we have no idea what Stamets is going to do with himself now. And Michael Burnham and Book haven't spoken in months. Admiral Guy from the Mummy, because I can never remember his name, but I remember him from the Mummy, so whatever. He tells Michael Burnham she's been summoned by Dr. Kovich, which sometimes I forget his name too, so if I call him Dr. Tyrell from Blade Runner, you'll know who I'm talking about. So, Dr. Kovich has summoned Michael Burnham and Admiral Mummy Guy. And they use this infinity symbol device to enter this completely white area called the Infinity Room, which looks like something out of the Matrix or Mr. Nobody's realm on Doom Patrol. An 800-year-old science vessel has been found on the edge of the Beta Quadrant, and Michael Burnham and Discovery have to jump there immediately and secure it. Michael Burnham asks what's on board, but Dr. Kovich won't tell her. He just says it's vital to the security of the Federation and a red directive. Whatever the hell that means. Dr. Kovich goes with Discovery, and they jump to the 800-year-old Romulan science vessel. 2 assholes are already there. One looks like the Sith apprentice from Ahsoka, and the other one looks like a generic alien guy. Their names are Mal and Locke, respectively. Mal and Locke get away with a puzzle box from the ship. Michael Burnham gives chase. She rides on their ship like Vincent from Beauty and the Beast riding the subway. Another captain by the name of Raynor has a ship, and he has the getaway ship of Mal and Locke in a tractor beam with Michael Burnham on top of it, telling him to just let the ship go and they'll track the warp signature. After bickering between them, Raynor finally lets the ship go. The ship spits out like 20 different warp signatures as it leaves, so they don't know which one to follow. Michael Burnham says she knows someone who can track the other ship, so Book comes back, and it's awkward between him and Michael Burnham, but Book figures out which path to follow and who would be interested in buying stuff salvaged from an 800-year-old ship. Michael Burnham, Book, and Raynor go to a desert planet straight out of Star Wars, but they're too late. Mal and Locke have killed the synth buyer, and they've fled. So everyone jumps on a land speeder, and they chase, and Raynor fires at the caves that Mal and Locke are trying to escape through, and Mal and Locke start an avalanche that will wipe out the entire village. In order to save the village, the Discovery and Raynor's ship drive their saucers into the sand, and they use their shields to protect the settlement. They are at an angle, probably about 45 degrees, hulls driven into the ground, and you see what looks like some sort of net that I guess represents their shields, and the sand and stones and everything from the avalanche build up alongside it. Okie dokie then. It was effective, and they saved the village. The Discovery must have used their mushroom drive to get out, because I have no idea how they would have managed otherwise. I have no idea how Raynor's ship managed to get out of this, but whatever. Mal and Locke get away, but the synth they were trying to sell the book to scanned the book before they killed him. And the crew of the Discovery recovers the information from the synth's memory. Tilly and Admiral Mummy Guy break into the classified files for this mission and discover that the mission was to recover Dr. Valek's diary. Michael Burnham confronts Dr. Kovich, and he finally admits that Dr. Valek was present when Captain Picard found the message left by the Progenitors. The Progenitors being the people who seeded other planets with life that would evolve to be like them. Somehow, Dr. Valek found the technology that the Progenitors used to design life itself. The location of the tech is in the diary, and Mal and Locke are on their way to find it. The Federation must find it before Mal and Locke do. Saru decides to take the ambassadorial position, and he will be leaving Discovery. He and his Vulcan lady friend get engaged to be married. The end. Season 5, Episode 2, Under the Twin Moons. The episode begins with Michael Burnham wondering about her purpose and why she's there. And I guess she was pondering the meaning of her life, but then she says that the mission has always been her purpose, but that's not enough anymore. She thinks tracking down the Progenitors' tech will give her answers and everything will make sense again. The Discovery is getting all the sand cleaned off that was stuck to it after saving the village in the previous episode. Saru comments that the sand had previously unknown properties. Before going to hunt the Progenitors' tech, Michael Burnham has to attend an inquiry into Captain Raynor's role in causing the avalanche in the previous episode. Raynor says he didn't do anything different from what he's been doing for the last 30 years, and he's told that times have changed by the Federation president. Raynor then tells the president that she's living in a candy-colored hollow fantasy, and Michael Burnham turns to him and tells him he's not helping himself. Raynor says they're wasting time, and Michael Burnham tells him that the world is bigger than their corner of it. Admiral Mummy Guy tells Michael Burnham that Book is going to be going on this mission, and things are only slightly awkward between Michael Burnham and Book. Saru and Michael Burnham will be going to the planet. Tilly and Adira will be monitoring from the ship. Dr. Kovich will monitor from Federation headquarters. Michael Burnham and Saru go down to do an Indiana Jones thing. They get attacked by drones. Tilly and Adira are struggling to get the drones turned off. That's when Captain Raynor appears as he's been monitoring the mission, and he helps Tilly and Adira figure out how to disable the drones. Saru and Michael Burnham find a stela with 4 lines of verse, but Saru knows there should be a 5th line. They find it under the stela, but it's information that Mal and Locke don't have, so their staff will be too short and they'll be digging in the wrong place. There's also some piece of something that Saru finds underneath the stela. Michael Burnham and Saru take it with them. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Book, Stamets, and Culver contact Mal and Locke. Book tells them he's interested in the artifact and he wants to do business with them, but Mal and Locke aren't interested in doing business with him. During the exchange, Book recognizes a birthmark on Mal's neck, and he realizes that she is the daughter of his mentor, Cleveland Booker IV, being the namesake of himself, Cleveland Booker V, a moniker he took after his mentor retired. So again, Book is not his real name. It's just the identity he's chosen for himself. Stamets, Michael Burnham, Saru, Tilly, and Adira print a symbol from the diary, and the piece of whatever it is that Michael Burnham and Saru took from under the stela fits into it. Michael Burnham concludes it's a map broken into 5 pieces, and the poem from the stela tells them where to go next. Putting together all 5 pieces will lead them to the Progenitors' technology, and the next stop will be Trill, which makes Adira feel slightly uncomfortable because she is enjoying her time away from Gray. Thus concludes Saru's last day on Discovery, and he is leaving the ship. In an odd but totally foreseeable twist of fate, Captain Raynor gets retired by the inquiry into his previous behavior, and Michael Burnham asks him to be her new number 1, because once upon a time, she was also given a second chance. And Rayner accepts the position. The end. Well, as far as Discovery episodes go, these weren't the worst episodes I've ever seen. There was nothing that I found blatantly offensive. I will say that I think I read those trailers correctly, that this is going to be a very Goonies, Indiana Jones, Stargate kind of season. I did not foresee the tie-in with the Progenitors, but somehow they're going to take that one episode from The Next Generation and turn it into an entire season of Star Trek Discovery. I just remember how disappointed the Cardassians and the Klingons were at the end of that TNG episode, The Chase. What was that, season 6, episode 20? So I don't know how they're going to end this season, if it's going to be the same way, or if they think that they're going to write this so that the species have finally reached the point that the progenitors wanted them to reach, as far as coming together and understanding that they're all descendants of the progenitors, that they're all brothers and sisters, basically. Oh God, there was so much in this episode. Well, these 2 episodes. For instance, it looks like Tilly has a crush on a guy, but it was so awkward and awful that there's just no way in real life that she'd be able to get with a guy like that. And it's not because of her looks. The way she behaved when she was talking to him, dear Lord, just, it's not going to happen. Maybe you shouldn't feel chemistry between Saru and his Vulcan lady friend. What is she? The president of Navarre, I think. But again, there's another relationship where there seems to be no depth to it. They're a couple because the writers say they are. And there's a lot of that going on this ship. Culber and Stamets, I've never felt any chemistry between those two. If the Michael Burnham character could pull that big stick out of her butt, she and Book might actually have a chance. But again, it's the writing that's never going to allow that to happen. And Book, apparently, I guess he must have gone to jail for a little while, but now he's working with refugees or something. So he's been rehabilitated, Michael Burnham style. I didn't hate the first episode, but it was not Star Trek. The characters were all the same dopey characters they were before, but I think because it so resembled something more like an Indiana Jones or Stargate story, that it had so much action going on that it didn't give you enough time to breathe and actually think about how dumb the story was or how ripped off. Because with the Progenitors, that story was a lot like what the Goa'uld did in Stargate as far as seeding other planets with life. Obviously not the same, because the Goa'uld didn't do it in their own image, because they were like these creepy snake leech things. I think humanity has pondered for some time, like, where did we come from? But I don't feel like this show is going to give us any kind of depth into pondering that dilemma.
The first episode that we watched, that Red Directive, first off, this is yet another Red thing that they did in these secret hideout shows. It seems like they're obsessed with Red, including the J.J. Abrams 2009 movie with that red matter. I don't know what that is. I don't care. And I agree, that first episode, it moved along pretty quickly, and it was not horrible, but the reason for that is the same reason a lot of people like the first J.J. Abrams 2009 movie. It was almost nonstop action, so there wasn't a ton of time for people to talk and ruin it with their horrible characters. They had these Return of the Jedi Imperial speeder things that they were riding in the desert. And it's funny because I think the Admiral Vance, I think is his name. I could be wrong, but I think...
Oh, is it? Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is Admiral Mummy Guy.
But he should have went on that planet, because with that sand cloud that after the avalanche happened, that would have been funny. Kind of a wink to the camera.
Oh, definitely. That would have been way better than what they did do.
So the first episode wasn't horrible, although there were some stupid things in there. I do not understand, at the end, when those ships came down, essentially crashed into the sand on an angle, had their shields up to block the avalanche sand from hitting this town. And just having that ship sticking out of the ground seemed stupid to me.
They watched Star Trek Picard and the flinging of that ship using a tractor beam, and they said, "Hold my beer."
Well, it's that sort of, I guess, physics or structural understanding. Because in the 90s, when Voyager landed, those struts came down, they landed in a way that made sense, at least from what they were explaining the design of the ship was. Not just ramming your ship into the ground as fast as you can and then impaling it in the ground. Or I don't know if the ships actually went in the ground, but it just kind of seemed like that's where they were. And then, like the scene after that, then you saw, I think it was Discovery getting ready to come back into Starport or whatever that thing is.
Space dock, we'll call it.
And like it looked like sand was floating off the ship. So they must have mushroomed out of being impaled into the sand and put it into space. I do not know how we're supposed to suspend disbelief in order to try to take this series for what I guess they're trying to do. Because all through both episodes, there were these weird technologies that a lot of times came out of their comm badge. Like when Michael Burnham and Saru were on the planet investigating that artifact, or looking for the artifact, I guess. And their tricorder is like this holographic dial that they move around. And Michael Burnham was holding up a map like above her, I don't know, wrist or whatever when she was walking around. And then in one of the scenes when you said in your synopsis that Captain Rayner came in and helped Tilly and Adira, and he just came in, is what you said, is like magic. In fact, all these transporting stuff, they don't walk to transporter rooms. They just transport from their locations and go poof. All their technology usage that they were doing took me out of the story every single time because it was usually stupid.
It was like watching Harry Potter.
It was magic.
The way that people would just blink in and out like that.
I guess that they would try to say, I think it was Arthur C. Clarke who said something like, if a civilization was advanced enough, it would be difficult to determine whether something was science or magic, or it was some variation of that quote. And I guess they would try to argue that's the case here, but no, that was magic. What they were using was magic.
Like when Michael Burnham's phaser went from being a phaser to a rifle.
Well, first, when their phasers appear when they're going to use them, they just transport into their hands, which they've done previously, because I remember us complaining about that. So she had this little hand phaser when we were in the flashback and we saw how she ended up on the outside of that ship. And she was taking some like heavy fire or something. So she just kind of like looked down at her hand phaser and it turned into a rifle at that point. And then she was shooting it. And I guess it somehow was transported, or that, what's that matter that they have? That
programmable matter.
Yeah, I mean, what they thought of for the technology Bible for this series makes no sense. It is impossible to suspend disbelief and watch this stuff. At least with Harry Potter, usually when a spell does something, it always does that.
Oh, it does. It does.
Whereas here, it's, I don't know, 50-50 on if they're even going to remember that they did that a few episodes ago and they could do it now. Captain Rayner is essentially Captain Shaw 2.0 from Picard.
This guy seems more competent than Shaw, though.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a likability going on with him, but that was the guy who was mansplaining to Michael Burnham when she was on top of that ship in Warp doing the beast on top of the subway in New York. And it was just as bad as the trailer led us to believe that we talked about last week in our What Are We Expecting Out of This Series this season. The name itself, I know Molly and I were joking last night. This morning I was thinking of something else too. So, wasn't Rayner, Jim Rayner, wasn't he the guy in StarCraft? Normally I wouldn't even bring this stuff up, but this series has historically stolen from so many things that I don't know if this is a Jim Rayner from StarCraft type stealing here. It may not be, but I don't care. And the thing that really bothered me with the Raynor character was in our video from last week where we were predicting this season, and I said that maybe I could accept this final season and maybe try to find some sort of usefulness in this series if this season they had Michael Burnham acknowledging her mistakes, acknowledging that she's not a very good captain, and stepping down and saying, look, the crises are done. I don't need to feel like I have to help out. I can just do something else. Like maybe her and Book could have went on and did some sort of smuggling or whatever together. But what they ended up doing is they took this Raynor character and they made it essentially Michael Burnham. So when this guy strongly encouraged to resign his commission, then Michael Burnham is going to take this guy under her wing and he's going to be the new first officer on Discovery. And Molly joked yesterday when we were watching this, she said, well, that'll be good because Michael Burnham's got away with far worse crimes than Raynor did. So if Raynor ever wants to figure out how to get out of whatever crimes that this new Starfleet thinks he's guilty of, Michael Burnham's the perfect person to learn under on how to take no responsibility for your bad deeds. That really irritated me. That was at the end of episode 2. And it was clear that all the things that I was hoping finally they were going to do with Michael Burnham to show that she grew as a character, and all they're going to do is channel this into that Raynor character. In fact, she's probably going to be very sanctimonious when she's correcting him as he's learning under the great Michael Burnham.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I don't know if they decided to incorporate Raynor because they think that Captain Shaw was just so popular on that 3rd season of Picard and decided that including something like that would appease fans. I don't know what the timeline is for the writing on this season. I don't know. However, the other possibility is that now they've got this old white guy in there. What is he? He's male, he's pale, and he's stale. And she is going to do exactly what you just said. She's going to lecture him every opportunity she gets to try to get him to mend his ways.
It was amazing because some people would try to argue with us and say, you're just not getting it. Michael Burnham has grown from the very first time in season 1. And it's just happened kind of off screen. And I would say, no, that's not true, because we bring this up so many times since she did this. But last season, when Book asked, how is this any different than what you did with the Klingons? And Michael Burnham said, everybody, she had an intrinsic understanding of Klingon culture. That says she did not learn a gosh darn thing about what she did in season 1. So she did have no character growth, yet they're going to try to say that Michael Burnham is the better mentor for this Captain Raynor, and Captain Raynor is a far less criminal than Michael Burnham.
Yeah, and it was interesting because before Saru left the ship, he and Michael Burnham were having their little love fest. She was telling him how great he was and all this other crap, and I'm just sitting there like, this is the same guy who ordered the torture of a tardigrade and said they'd worry about the ethics about it later. He was also there, I can't remember if he was the instigator or not, but he was definitely present when they planted that bomb among the corpses when the Klingons were gathering their dead after that first battle at the beginning of season 1. So this guy also is a terrible war criminal of the highest order, and yet he and Michael Burnham are just having this love fest with how great they are. It just really disgusted me.
And by the way, I've had people ask me, why do we refer to Michael Burnham with both names and not just say Michael? At this point, she's such a comical character. She's like Batman or something where you have to hyphenate the name. She's just Michael Burnham. You have to run it together. It's a trademark. It's not actually a name. It's just some sort of identity that they're pushing on the show of, I guess, a war criminal is cool, and it's called Michael Burnham. That's just put a hyphen between the two names.
Well, why would I call her Michael? That would imply familiarity. Using her first name, and
I guess we could call her
I could call her Burnham.
Captain Burnham, maybe.
But I'm not calling her Michael. I don't call Sylvia Tilly Sylvia. I mean, Saru only has one name. Stamets and Culber, last names. Adira, as far as I know, only has one name. Who knows? Yeah, I'm not going to call her Michael. Why would I do that? It makes no sense.
I purposely hyphenate them together because the Michael Burnham character has been toast ever since season 1.
Well, they did that on purpose. They gave her a traditionally male first name because they wanted you to use it.
Oh, no. If you complained about that, somebody will come out of the woodwork and say, you understand in the Waltons, there was a female named Michael in that, too.
I said traditionally.
Yeah, they purposely did that to try to get people to say something about it so that they could then pull up some sort of argument about how bigoted people are.
Yeah.
Because overall, I don't have a problem with the name Michael for her. The problem I have is that she's a horrible war crime-y person.
Exactly.
And she has no depth at all. So I'm calling her Michael Burnham and I'm hyphenating it.
Yep.
But anyway, what I was saying was, through this episode, especially at the end when she was talking to Captain Rayner, she was trying to say, I got a second chance. She was thanking people for second chances, including Saru. And then she was saying to Rayner that everybody deserves a second chance. And I'm thinking, first of all, Michael Burnham's got more than one chance. Because I remember when Saru, when she was demoted down to his first officer, I forget what season it was, because she was a screw-up then, too. Michael Burnham has never taken any responsibility for any of the crap she did. So I don't go along with a chance means that you've ended one of your chances and started another, meaning that chance ended at some point by admitting that you messed up. She never did that. Even when she was sent to prison, it was for 6 months, and she never really did any acknowledgement except she gave into fear. I'm sure all those people that died in that war are really going to appreciate that Michael Burnham gave into fear and she admitted that. And then in season 4, she doesn't even step up. Because here's how that should have went in season 4. We said it in our video last season for this, but I'm going to say it again. When Book asked, how is this different than what you did with the Klingons? And Michael Burnham should have said, Book, it's not. I was very sure that I was correct and that I knew what I needed to know in order to go against my captain and the establishment. And I thought I was right and everybody else was wrong. And I learned that that was a mistake. Millions of people died because of the mistakes that I made, and I have to live with that. I don't want you to have to deal with that, Book, because it's a hard thing to weigh on your shoulders. See, that's how it should have went, and then I would have said, you know what? Michael Burnham actually has grown.
Yep.
But all of a sudden in this season, she's talking about she got a second chance, and now she's going to give Rayner a second chance. It's like, no. You should not be mentoring anybody. You should be kicked out. That Rayner arc that's getting ready to happen, that should be Michael Burnham.
No, it's perfect because Rayner isn't sorry for what he did either.
And all I can think of is maybe they just aren't allowed to take Michael Burnham off her pedestal and give her a proper character growth because it would kind of taint her character, even though it would make her a better character. So they're going to do everything that the executives are preventing them to do with Michael Burnham. And they're like, well, you know what? We're going to do exactly what we need to with this Rayner character, who's essentially Michael Burnham 2.0, but we'll be able to give him a proper character arc on how he could relearn how to do things now in this new world. To me, that is disgusting that they will not, at this late stage, even give the Michael Burnham character any sort of proper solution to the problem that they painted her in. Instead of just ignoring it, they painted themselves in a corner, and they're just going to say, yeah, but Rayner will take care of it.
Well, they're going to re-educate Rayner so that he can fit in with the Michael Burnham world.
Because now whenever I see Rayner and she corrects him, I'm going to think, and I'm saying this not to necessarily be a jerk, it's that I feel that Sonequa Martin Green, she got set up from the very get-go with this horrible character, and this was going to be a chance for her to somehow fix that character. This was her last chance to fix that character. And what they did is introduce this Raynor instead of actually fixing Michael Burnham.
No, she gets to be a mentor to him.
But she shouldn't be a mentor to anybody because she has not fixed herself yet.
I know.
Again, last season, when Book asked that question and her response was she had an intrinsic understanding of Klingon culture, she did not. She made a ton of mistakes. So even as recent as last season, because some people are going to say, dude, let it go. That was in season 1. They brought it up again in season 4, which was just last season. I'm not going to let that go. They brought it back up.
Well, and you can say they brought it up here too, because again, she's telling him she got a second chance, so she's going to give him one as well. Again, that's nodding back to season 1. I don't know what to say to these people who think that this is okay, because it's not. I am so tired of people never taking responsibility for their actions. In fact, getting praised for it or even falling upward, because she's a captain now. When she started that war, got her captain killed, she was just second in command. She was Captain Georgiou's number 1.
Who never went to Starfleet Academy as far as I can tell.
No.
Michael Burnham went to the Vulcan Science Academy, but I don't believe she ever attended a day at Starfleet Academy.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Then you got this concept of Tilly. And Tilly is teaching something at the academy, this new academy they started in the future. What is she teaching? I'm going through and remembering what she went through. Maybe I have to go back to the first episode again, but I thought she was Ensign Tilly. And then she got some sort of promotion, maybe last season or possibly season 3. And she's like Lieutenant Tilly now. What is she teaching? I'm assuming she's good at math. I'm assuming that's why she was on Discovery from the get-go with Lorca. But what did she gain just because she had a little bit of character growth and maybe working on a team and figuring out solutions to stuff? One accomplishment doesn't qualify you to teach others about that. So if anybody knows what Tilly is teaching, and if you do know what she's teaching, could you please explain where she got that expertise from? Because I didn't see a lot of that on screen. So I don't understand what's going on there. And then the little dialogues that were happening in scenes between the action that was happening, especially in episode 2, it was all cringe. Every single scene where they had people getting together and talking was cringe. The Burnham and Saru stuff was the least cringe when they were saying their goodbyes, but it still wasn't all that great.
And she did tell him that his room would be sitting there waiting for him, just like he left it, if he chooses to come back. And I'm sitting there thinking, so is this a Federation starship, or is this like Michael Burnham's flying house? How is it that this
it's like when a kid goes off to college and then the parents keep the room as the kid had it in case the kid comes back and needs the room.
Yeah. So how is it that they're going to keep this room allocated to Saru when he's not on the ship? That I didn't understand at all. They're just going to fly around with that room unoccupied and all of Saru's stuff just sitting there still, I guess. I don't know. Weird. Very weird.
And these 2 episodes, which is probably going to be the entire season, is essentially building off of that season 6 episode of The Next Generation, The Chase.
Yes.
We rewatched The Chase this morning before we recorded this video. That was a nice, slow-moving story where it actually felt like that was an academic. Was it Professor Galen, I think, was Picard's mentor when it came to archaeology. But it felt like an academic thing. And then when Dr. Crusher was helping him try to map out what these numbers meant and how it mapped to DNA, Dr. Crusher's a doctor. It felt like she was using her field of expertise to help Picard. These 2 episodes with Discovery, it didn't feel like they were doing any problem solving with expertise. It's just somehow the knowledge, they Googled for the knowledge and they got the knowledge.
Well, like you said, Culber working on the synth, Fred, his name was Fred. where did he get the expertise to be working on a synth? He's a medical doctor. But again, I guess that was probably because Gray got that body in the previous season, the synth body. So that must be it. But then this synth himself, he...
Discount Data is what I'm calling him.
Discount Data.
Because it was like somebody cosplaying Data and doing it really, really badly.
Yeah, because he didn't seem to have the same attributes that Data had, and even like the makeup job they did on him was like half-assed.
Yeah, when he turned his head, you could see where they stopped the makeup around his chin. I mean, it looked really bad.
Or the back of his neck still looked... But then again, maybe it was just the color grading that the back of his neck looked peachy orange instead of the proper Data coloring. I was half expecting this guy to turn out to be just a person pretending to be a synth, because he didn't seem to have synth qualities other than a half-assed paint job.
Yeah, and he had the Data contact lenses, and that was about it.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So I was like, wow, that was really piss poor.
Going back to the first episode where they had that desert scene, the music that was playing through a lot of it was like a John Williams mix between Indiana Jones and some of the Star Wars stuff. And the Indiana Jones would make sense because that's essentially what the first episode was an Indiana Jones episode. I'm not talking just archaeology. Hey, archaeology has kind of a overlap with Indiana Jones. Like, no. I mean, like, they were fan filming an Indiana Jones movie, at least for part of the first episode. The music and everything. And then when they got on those Return of the Jedi, whatever those things are called that the stormtroopers were on Endor in Return of the Jedi, I looked at Molly and Molly looked at me and Molly said, "What, are we watching Star Wars now?" Now, to give credit, the action scenes on that desert planet, they moved pretty well.
Yeah.
And for action scenes, they were okay for what this secret hideout has produced up to this point.
When they first arrived on the planet, you could tell very easily what was practical set and what was green screened in. It was very obvious. This goes back to, where's their money going? Because this just doesn't look like it's costing, what was it, $10 million an episode or whatever it is?
There was an advertisement or a behind the scenes that I saw scrolling around on social media where Kurtzman or one of Kurtzman's people were bragging about the cinematic cutting edge visual effects that they have now. And they were including what was going on in season 5. I mean, some of the effects were okay. Some of them were not. Again, I don't know where this money is going. I could nitpick their visual effects to death. That was not the biggest problem with these 2 episodes. So all I'm saying is there's a behind the scenes somewhere where Kurtzman's people, possibly him, are talking about how they've upped their game in this season for visual effects. And maybe they have, but we just haven't seen the episodes yet. I was not impressed with the visual effects in this episode at all.
No, it looked like the same old stuff.
Yeah. It's not like the worst thing I've ever seen, but I don't see why it was getting all this praise as like a notch up. The desert stuff that they ran some sort of sand wind simulations on, okay, I mean, there's software that does that, so hey, you're doing as good of a job as The Mummy did back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Great job. I'm not going to applaud that as being anything to praise. As we talked about last week when we were talking about that South by Southwest panel with the cast and Michelle Paradise and Alex Kurtzman, and Michelle Paradise said this odd thing about how canon, they're going to pay attention to canon, implying like that's important to them. Now after watching this, I know what that means. What she's saying is, we have sat there and we went through all the episodes of TNG, or at least we talked to somebody who did, and we're going to take that one episode, The Chase, and we're going to do everything we can to put as many callbacks as we can. Because even during the episode, not related to The Chase, they had a tribble in the background that was like crawling around on a door frame or a hall frame or something. What Michelle Paradise meant, it's becoming clear when she said that canon thing, because it was odd, we even talked about it in our video, is what she means is, we are going to build and ruin that episode of TNG for you. We're going to make callback after callback after callback, and we might call back to other things. Why? Because season 3 of Picard with Terry Matalas, there's a group of people that think that was better than the first 2 seasons. Why? because the iconography was closer to what they were used to. That's the only difference. To this day, I do not understand why people say season 3 of Picard was any better. The only thing it had going for it was the iconography was closer to TNG, and you had more actors from TNG. But if you look at the stories that they were pushing in those episodes, how can you cut off your hand, it turns into a face and talks to you? How is that any different than eating a car battery?
It's not. But we're not here to talk about Picard.
Well, it relates to this because I think the lesson they learned is there's a group of people that are actually praising something that this company did. And all they did is they just strip mined TNG. So we'll do the same thing. We'll go to an episode of TNG and we'll strip mine the crap out of that and drag it out to a whole season.
Yeah. All right, I see what you're doing there. Yeah. So I would recommend to people, instead, you could go watch Stargate. You could go watch The Goonies, The Mummy, the one with Brendan Fraser.
Even Gilligan's Island. There was an episode of Gilligan's Island where they had these stone tablet pieces that they were trying to assemble because it was supposed to show how to get off the island. And it might have been 5 pieces, just like at the end when they formed that map on Discovery. Because Molly was, I don't want to take credit for this joke, but Molly, when they assembled those pieces on Discovery, Molly said, that was a Gilligan's Island episode, and I'm nodding going, yup.
Yep, where they had to find the pieces of the map to try to escape the island. Obviously it didn't work because it was actually a map on how to get to the island. Yeah, so hey, you can watch that episode of Gilligan's Island. Oh, Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's another one that would be better to watch than this.
You made that joke when you were giving your synopsis about the staff being too short.
Yeah.
Or too long. I forget what it was in Indiana Jones.
It was too tall. Their staff was too tall. They were digging in the wrong place.
But that's essentially the idea they did here, is these people who are going to get the same information, they didn't get the complete information, so they don't have an exact location of what the next thing is.
Yeah, the last line from underneath the Stella was missing, just like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the minus portion from the back of the medallion, the Nazis didn't have that information.
Yeah, because they were going by the imprint that was left on that guy's hand.
Burned into that guy's hand, yeah. Which comes back around to, are they using AI to strip mine all of these other franchises to give them an outline for their stories? I look at what they're doing and I have to wonder if they're purposefully pulling from these other things. I mean, TNG, obviously, because they even referenced the episode, but the rest of that, it really feels like they are using AI to launder ideas from other franchises and try to say that it was original stuff they wrote themselves. I don't buy it. I don't know if they used AI to do this or if it was just that they're familiar with those other franchises, so they just stole from them just outright. I don't know. I know people will say, oh, all these ideas, they've been done before. These are common tropes. And I'm like, fine, whatever. But I find it interesting that they're using the ones that are the most popular to try to further this show.
The fact that when they were on that sand planet and they were playing music that sounded like it could have been from Indiana Jones, it definitely didn't sound like the music that Star Trek Discovery usually did.
No.
It just seems like they don't have any more original ideas left. They don't. The character interactions in these 2 episodes was bad. That was the worst part. It was better when they were doing action-y stuff because at least, much like JJ Trek 2009, you were so busy watching the flashing lights and people yelling and running back and forth that you didn't have time to think about, does this make any sense?
Yeah.
I mean, we did as we watched it. I hated that movie right as we watched it. It wasn't hindsight that made me go, well, 2009 Star Trek isn't so good. I hated that movie as we were watching it. Lots of people, it took them a while to catch up and realize, well, wait a minute, now that I think about it, that movie was pretty stupid and a lot of the stuff didn't make sense. It's like, yeah. And that's because they pushed this action and you were so busy going from one action set piece to another, you never got to think about, well, what's the story that's trying to glue those set pieces together? It's stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say about this is that I don't expect to get anything profound out of this season, even though Michael Burnham in the second episode was pondering her place in the universe and basically what it all means. I don't think they're going to come up with any ideas that are going to be meaningful as far as...
Or original.
Exactly. As far as thought-provoking innovations as far as the meaning of life. I don't think we're going to get anything that is worthwhile out of this. I don't think there's going to be any rewatchability out of this. As I said, you're better off watching something like Raiders of the Lost Ark or The Mummy to give you something to think about, but also entertain you in the same way. As far as the archaeological searching for things, also just pondering the meaning of everything.
Of the 2 episodes, I guess if I had to say which one was better, it was the first one, because there was dialogue, but there was a lot of action that minimized the amount of dialogue they could have. Episode 2, it's downhill. The best part of episode 2 is like the first minute, and then it keeps going down. It gets worse every single minute afterwards. I cannot believe that this season, of course, I couldn't believe with Picard that's how they were sending off the TNG people, was with that garbage. And I cannot believe this. Well, actually, with Discovery, I can. Their whole thing was crap. All 4 seasons of this has been crap. So why wouldn't the 5th season be crap? But I guess I would have thought they would have spent extra effort to try to make this less crap. And apparently, so far, they're not going to do that.
Hey, at least they're not committing a bunch of war crimes.
Not done yet.
Yeah, exactly.
But Michael Burnham's going to walk around and teach Captain Raynor the right way to do things.
And here's another prediction. I'll just put this out there. I wonder if the technology of the progenitors, the starting life device or whatever the hell it's going to end up being, I wonder if Book and Mal are going to get together and use that to try to restart their planet. Because if Mal is the daughter of Book's mentor, I don't know if he was from the same planet or not as Book was, but I wonder if Book's going to betray Michael Burnham yet again to try to do this thing to bring his planet back.
I just assumed what they were going to do is they were going to find out that Michael Burnham was actually one of those direct progenitors. She just was a hidden one, because she's the greatest thing in the universe.
She'll become one of the progenitors.
No, she is one. She's always been one. That's why she always hasn't fit in, and it's because she's at this super advanced race that seeded the humanoids population in this part of the galaxy. Now, I'm being sarcastic, and I'm just thinking of the most ridiculous thing I can. But if somebody asked me, well, what's the likelihood Discovery will do that? 50-50.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about this crap?
Nah, this is pretty much what I expected. Based on our video we released last week, I didn't know the details of what they were going to do, but the broad strokes, this is pretty much exactly what I thought it was going to be. I was disappointed. I had such low expectations, but I was disappointed that they're creating this Raynor character to go through the arc that Michael Burnham should be going through in order for her character to make sense. When somebody goes back and says, why would you watch Discovery? At the very least, if season 5 was about finishing Michael Burnham's arc and her realizing that what she's been doing for all these seasons has been crap, and that she's going to grow up and she's going to take responsibility for what she did, like they're trying to do with the Raynor character, to see a purpose after the crimes, then there could have been a reasoning for why watch Discovery, so you can watch a character go from being at the lowest of human beings to trying to deal with that and to try to make a life for themselves. That's what they could have done if they would have taken what they're doing with Raynor and made it Michael Burnham. And last week I was hoping they were going to do something like that. Nope, it's going to be Raynor. Michael Burnham is the obnoxious, unrepentant person that she has always been. And that disappointed me, because the rest of this was as I expected. But when they did Raynor and they made him the first officer of Burnham and going through what he did as far as those mistakes he made, that was a bit of a punch in the gut, because the one expectation I was hoping was they were going to at least end fixing the Michael Burnham character, so that was the end of that. Nope. This is going to be a pointless season 5 with a bunch of crying and a bunch of pretentious garbage that they're going to do.
Exactly. Just as we predicted. So that's all we've got to say about that. As I said in the beginning, we could really use your help in getting our subscriber number up so that we can apply to see if we can get monetized. So any help we can get there would be greatly appreciated. And as always, leave your comments in the space below the video and we can talk about this. And until next week, take care.